Good afternoon and welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I am W.D. Foster Graham, the book review editor for Inside News, and I will be your host for this Book Chat Thursday. On the Conversation with Al McFarlane, we preside robust, stimulating, inspiring conversation from all areas of the African and African American diaspora. Now, we have exceeded 1,000 subscribers to our channel, and we're seeking to go to 2,000. So, if you're enjoying our content, our guests, and our conversations, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to Insight News Minnesota. Now, today, our guest author is Jean Mountain. And so I like to say happy Pride. And before I introduce Jean, I like to share for those who are not familiar with the origin of Pride, a significant moment in history. On June 27th, 1969, police raided a bar known as the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, New York. Now, this is an LGBT bar, and the common practice by the police was of bullying, intimidation, and fear. The patrons who were taken away had their names plastered in the newspaper for everyone to see. Employers, family members, friends. And given there were no protections so far as employment, persons could be fired. Intimidation tactics such as these were common practice for years and years in the New York City Police Department. However, on this night, there was a change. Rather than just go quietly and be hauled off into like the Black Mariah or the police bands, the patrons of the Stonewall Inn fought back in an act of social resistance that resulted in a riot that lasted 3 days. Now, among those who were in the forefront of this act of social resistance were trans activists of color Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. This event was the catalyst for the modern day LGBTQ movement. Now, there is a lot of prep work going on before that, but this was the start of what we know as Pride. Now, the first Pride marches took place in 1970 in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. They were not like the Pride parades and marches and events that we have today. Those initial Pride marches were acts of protest, just simply having the right to be. Now, the first Pride March in Minneapolis took place in 1972. There were only a handful of marchers, and it only lasted 2 blocks. But this is our origin of Pride, and on this day marks that 55th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And because of its historic significance, the Stonewall Inn in New York is now a national landmark. Now I mentioned that Marsha P. Johnson was a trans activist. So today we're going to be talking about the T in the LGBT, transgender, with our guest author, Jean Mountain. Jean is a lifelong Northsider, raising 4 children in the Northside area. She is the author of the children's book, Yep, That's My Mommy, and the founder of the nonprofit Hearts of Joy. Her goal is to successfully open a homeless shelter for the LGBTQ plus community and to open a thrift store where they can be employed. Mountain also works to make her neighborhood a great place to live. Jean is a healthcare worker and a transgender mother, striving to raise 4 brown children successfully in this challenging environment where children of color and members of the LGBTQ plus community are not always safe. She wrote the children's book, Yep, That's My Mommy, to help educate the community about the differences in family units and how, at the end of the day, we are all parents who love our children. So, that being said, it is my good pleasure to introduce our guest author for Book Chat Thursday, Jean Mountain.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jean. Nice to meet you all.
And we are so happy to have you, Jean, for as we have Pride Month is coming to the end. Now, we often talk about the L, the B, and the G, but today we're going to talk about the T.
Great. Since we're the ones that started it.
Exactly, exactly. So I know, so knowing that you know about Marsha P. Johnson.
I I know, I very much so do. And that's what's kind of odd to me, that we transgender women are the ones that started this movement, and somehow we seem to be left behind in the crowd.
No, hey, no, on this show, can't have that. Like I said, everybody in the diaspora deserves that representation and the respect. Like Aretha says, RESPECT.
Exactly.
So, question on this. Now, how does being a transgender parent affect your children?
In our home, we're just a normal family. We don't talk about being transgender. We don't talk about it in that at that level, because in our home we're just like the house next door. The only difference is they have a transgender mother. Now, we don't talk about that much, but I do know that they know what's going on. We have discussed it. As you said, I wrote a children's book to educate my children and to kind of open the doors for communication with them, to ask me questions. But as a parent, I realize that my children don't see me as a transgender mother, they see me as their mother. Society sees me as a transgender mother. I never was willing to use them terms, and I don't use them terms often. I do now more because, and actually, I've only considered myself a transgender woman in the past 3 to 5 years because of writing this book. Before this, actually, and it's funny that we're talking about the Stonewall, because we went to the anniversary at the Arts Museum with Andrea Jenkins, and we learned a lot. And we went to that presentation they had there, which I learned a lot. And sitting with the younger community and listening to the younger community express their new views on LGBTQ, them, they, us, and all these new things was quite alarming to me, because women of my stature wanted to keep this a secret. We weren't as open. We didn't go out and say we're transgender. We were like, no, I'm a real woman, and we spent our lives trying to fit in and assimilate and be kept under the radar. So it's quite interesting for me now to be openly saying I'm a transgender woman. Um, and it's interesting for me to learn the things, even the things that you just brought to me today, made me realize, wow, my girls started this movement. My girls, and we we rarely get recognized and lifted up on a pedestal to be that we did start this. It turned into something so much different as the years went on. But to hear you say that the women, the transgender women, were the ones that started this, and to realize that we've been left so far behind is interesting to me.
Indeed. And so, and especially when I think of today, you have trans women such as Laverne Cox and Janet Mock. Um,
Yes.
tell me, and then now looking at them today as trans women of color, and then you go back all back to 1950s when Christine Jorgensen, that was
Yep.
a major deal as a trans woman.
Yes.
Um, what and also what you just shared about the young people and about being trans. What do you see in terms of what progress has been made and what still needs to happen?
Well, I do see that I'm, I'm older, so obviously all this new stuff is different for me. And I mean, I'm glad it's happening. Um, Fortunately, my children are in a school district that accepts me as a transgender woman and gives me the respect and the protection in the St. Louis Park school districts, which was surprising to me, but I found out through some of the meetings I went to that we're pretty much safe and protected. So that has been enlightening for me. And it's good for me because my children, I see they're learning new things. And with the younger community being so open and ready to go forward with the next stage of this fight, um, I'm excited. I'm scared. Um, I have a lot of views on that where I'm just don't quite know if we're going too fast, we're not going fast enough. And I'm probably not the one to speak on it because I do get nervous. I'm older, so I obviously look at things in a more safe type way. Where these younger kids are so fearless that they scare me. I'm scared for them. I'm scared about Florida. I'm scared about North Dakota. I'm scared about a lot more things than I thought I would be at this age. I thought that I would not have to endure what's happening to us in this country right now. Um, and that is my reason for writing the book, my reason to go forward with this shelter plan, because I believe that we people say we're safe, people say things, but speaking just in general, in the last week at work, um, I was called a tranny bitch because someone was angry with me. And when speaking to the company, I had called another employee lazy, and it seemed to me that they were more interested in me calling the other woman lazy than they were in the other employee calling me what they did. And it was interesting to me to be stuck in that dynamic at this time in my life. And I told them that it bothers me. I have tough skin, I can handle it. But as a company, how are you going to handle this situation um, in dealing with this, going forward with this new employee who you just employed and has openly called me these vulgar names in the workplace in front of many different high ranking people in the company, and she's still there. That's fine. I want her to have a chance. But my question was to the administration, how are you going to handle this? Are you going to, what is your company going to do? Is it going to, and they didn't do anything. And I have to work, so I'm going to let it go. But it's just interesting to me to think that, and I know we're protected, but I don't think the laws and the way we handle what happens to us has caught up with reality. I mean, when that happened to me, I felt very violated, um, but I didn't know how to handle it because I felt like, who do I go to? What do I do? How do I handle it? How do I make that situation known to the employers that that's wrong, even though everybody knew it was, but nobody took any action? So that part to me is quite disturbing that here we are. Here I am on a podcast speaking about my book, and I still don't feel protected quite the way that I should with the laws in place that do protect me.
Most definitely, because say when especially it comes to employment, navigating that as I say, we are both you and I share in common. We both have African American and Native American roots. Navigating as company,
Yeah.
um, so with that being said, what would from your standpoint, what would you see in terms of setting those boundaries, in terms of letting know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable?
Well, to me, I think that in right now, even with my company, Hearts of Joy, my goal in that, and I see now that we need to go to companies and we need to tell them calling somebody a transgender bitch is not acceptable. And
Mm-hmm.
for a company not to take action against that is disturbing to me. And it's so complicated because how do I address that and deal with it in the law? Do you know what I'm saying? How does that work? And I know that my girlfriends have spoke very the people that I'm working with in my company. We have thought, this is very, very important that we start to have diversity speaking. Like, and speaking about my book, in instances where, um, when I'm in the grocery store and somebody addresses me as sir, and I'm with my children, and my children are like, "What?" You know what I'm saying? Or
Mm-hmm.
addressing me, and I realized that in dealing with this and dealing with my children, I realized that I don't want to be addressed as sir, ma'am, she, her. I just want to be addressed as excuse me. Or if you're not sure on what to call somebody, I mean, we have to find an even ground there where we need to just say, excuse me, how may I help you? We don't have to always identify somebody. That's where I'm angry at, is because I'm tired of us. We're in a day now where we need to stop identifying people as what we think they may be, because what you see may not be what you're getting. And so
Indeed.
that has made me realize that how do we address people in public without identifying our, but we've been so trained to identify sir, ma'am, he, she,
Mm.
and we have to start getting away from that and just saying, for instance, me at work, you don't have to call me her, you don't have to call me she, you don't have to do any of that, but you will call me Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I leave it. If you're not comfortable calling me her, she, or whatever, then call me Jean. I'm okay
Mm-hmm.
with that. And that's kind of where I got the ground I got with at work, is that if there's an issue with someone's religion or whatever they say, which is protected just as well as I am, but that seems to trump my transgender identity always. So therefore, I give them that out card and say, then call me Jean. I don't want to step over the line with anybody's issues. But so if I'm willing to give you that, please be willing to give me my dignity and call me Jean.
Oh yes, I hear you. And also, I've recognized that when you have persons who are not only transgender, you have persons who are non-binary, for
Ex-
example, because to say
Exact.
the yeah, pronouns.
Ex-
'Cause-
yep. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Where is we need to, as society,
Mhm.
figure out a different way, because life is changing. People are
Mhm.
changing. You know, just like it even goes into what we just talked about, our race.
Mhm.
What if I don't want to be called a black woman, but I am? What if I don't want to be called an Indian woman, but I am?
Mhm.
But other people take it upon themselves to make that decision for me
Mhm.
by speaking it. And why can't I just be a woman? Or why can't I just be Jean? Why do I have to be spoken by my race, my identity, so many
Yes.
identifying markers that
Mhm.
identify me. And I think that we've gotten so far into that, identifying everybody by race, color,
Mhm.
gender, everything. And just like you said, there's different people now. That then my children, one of my children doesn't even see race,
Mm,
you know, and he's my oldest. And I find that funny because I do kind of use race, and I'm
mhm,
guilty of a lot of it. We all are.
mhm,
But I'm learning so much from him by that, because my reaction to situations, unfortunately, I'm older, is what color were they? You know,
mhm,
and he's like, what difference does that make? You
mm.
know? And
Okay.
so he's educating me on something that I'm having trouble dealing with, whereas it's the same thing as transgender, you know. So he's educating me like, Mom, it doesn't matter what color they are, and I'm not going to tell you what color they are. And that's where we go
Mm,
with that conversation. And I'm proud, 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 proud to have a child that does that. You know, and I think that we are going to someday, this new generation is not going to be color sensitive,
mhm.
sexually orientated sensitive, which I think is what is coming, that's happening. And that's where an old lady like me is like, oh my God, that's so scary. You know, they're doing too much too
Yeah.
fast. Slow down,
Uh-huh.
slow, you know, and because I'm older and I want people safe, but it's gonna happen. It's
Right.
happening. And once again, like I say, I'm gonna look at things a little differently now, because I realize this here transgender woman, we made it happen,
That's
you
right.
know, and
Yes.
I'm gonna start being proud of that.
Mhm,
You gave me something today that I'm gonna wear. It is going to be a badge that I wear proudly,
mhm,
because start giving me the respect I deserve
mhm,
as a transgender woman, and all the other transgender women that are coming up or that are here. We are a force to be reckoned with. We are getting better. We are getting more. We're getting to be out there. It's changing. And I'm
mhm.
glad that we have the actors and actresses that we have out there now that are changing that.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So now said you were a lifetime North Side, and I'm and I was born and raised on the South Side. So being in the North Side community, what ways does that affect your family?
Safety's number one, because, you know, we lived on Bryant Avenue North in our first home. And it was my first home I bought. I was scared. You know, when you live in an apartment, you can move if things get hairy for you. But when you buy a home, you cannot move. You own that home.
Hmm.
And that was a reality check for me, because I was very scared, because I knew that if I addressed anybody in my neighborhood or said anything, my gender was going to become the battleground.
Mm,
And for a long time, it was everybody knew me. I was a nice lady, the quiet lady, the one with the beautiful yard, the one with, you know, she's always fixing her house up, that lady on the corner. We spoke, and I was cordial with everybody, and I had relationships with everyone. I didn't go to their house and they didn't come to mine, but we were cordial. Eventually, we had neighbors living next to us with a rental property. That scared me very much. And we had the people move in. It was very rocky. I never said nothing, but when I did, the very thing that I was scared of happened. I was called filthy names. I was attacked, that saying things that I took my children to do, horrifying things to them because they were males. It was the most horrible experience I ever had. Now, I had been working with the police department, and the police department came. They had been working with me, and it had gotten out that what had happened, and all the neighbors had heard. But it was one thing that people didn't realize. I grew up over north. I'm a north side woman, and I can bounce the same way anybody else does. And I took it to the streets, and I did not back down one single bit. I showed them that I was I'm from the north side too. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you what you give me. And I gave it to them. I gave it to the block. And when the police came, because the next day The police came and they told me, Jean, we've heard about what happened yesterday, and we want you to understand that as a police department, we're going to protect you. And what happened to you is a hate crime. And we want to arrest these two parents next door to your home. Me being a parent, a transgender woman, I'm going to be kinder to you than you were to me. And I told the police officer, I cannot do that because she has 5 children over there. And if you arrest their parents, what's going to happen to those children? And so I was kinder to them, they were kinder to me. And I let it go because sometimes you have to think of humanity. You have to be kind enough to be like, okay, I'm not going to give them what they gave me. And that's what I did. And I let it go. And I told the police officers I wouldn't be pressing charges against them for hate crimes because I didn't want these children to suffer anymore. They were already suffering with parents like that, believe me. And to take it to that level, and they eventually moved, and I eventually sold the house and moved to my new house. And I still stayed north. I was still scared because after that, in my new home now, I'm scared. I don't want to. I know now, and I knew this before this happened, that if I spoke up or defended myself, my sexuality would become the number one situation. And in my life, I've learned that and about around black people and other any people, most people, but I'll say black because I live around black people and people of color will stab me so hard without even thinking, and go for my sexuality number one, and that's the scary part about living over here because I've knew that all my life as it is, but I do know in this neighborhood that's a very I'm a target, and that's what's the scary part about it. So I am careful. I don't patronize many businesses in this neighborhood, and that's sad too because I should be supporting my neighborhood. And I go to the areas where I know I'm safe, and so that's difficult, but it is what it is.
Yeah, sadly, and this is 2024.
Thank you.
So, based on that, I had one question. In terms of a lot of these attitudes, how much of that would you say is based on fear?
A lot of it. I think a lot of people have that fear that I'm going to molest their children. I'm the creepy one on the block. When
Mm,
we all know that's not the truth. We all know that statistically, we always do, we already know what happens and how it happens and who does it, and it's not going to be me.
hmm
You can believe that it could be, but I'm saying 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be me. But people assume that because people think we're not still past that stage where I might get that. I
mm,
might get sick. I might get, or they have AIDS or whatever it may be. We're not past that. People think we are, but we're not, you know. And it's just ironic to me that I do live in the zip code where we have the highest AIDS number of AIDS cases. I don't know if that statistically is the same. I know that it was 55411. I knew that for a long time. So it's just interesting to me is that we didn't, a transgender woman didn't bring it over here, and so
hmm
and people always assume that that we have bad intentions being parents, and I want people to understand clearly that I am a loving mother first. I'm a
hmm
transgender woman second, and I try to make that clear to everybody. I am a loving mother first, or a loving human being first,
hmm
and whatever comes after that is what it is. And that's what we've created in this society, not what I've asked for, because I always say to people, one day at work, something happened again about my gender. And the woman came to me. She said awful things to me. And after she came to me and I was on, she touched me and she touched my arm and she said, "I'm so sorry for what I said. And I'm telling you this because I'm going through this in my home." And I said, "What?" She said, "My son." And so I understood her and I was like, "Oh my God. She has a transgender son."
Mm-hmm.
She was devastated. She took it out on me. So I went to my car. Fortunately, I had my book. Went and got my book. Wrote in it. I wrote in the book. I wrote her name. I said to whoever it was, and I said, and in parentheses, I put, "God does not make mistakes."
Yeah,
And I signed it,
indeed.
and I gave her the book. I knew she was religious, and I wanted her to understand that. And I wanted her to understand that you didn't do anything wrong, and God made your child as He made me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish people could understand that God made me this way. I did not make this up. I did not choose to be this. This is how I was made. And it's as simple as that. And that's the scary part that people don't want to hear. It is as simple as that. I am the same as you. God makes us, and we are who we are. No one would choose to take on this battle for any other reason than the fact that it was true. And so I always try to explain that to people that God made us all, just like I tell my children, God brought you to me. God brought you to me, and I always tell them that they want to know how they came to be my children. And I tell them, God brought you here. God brought you to me, and that's the thing I want people to understand. Another part about me is I am very religious and
Mm-hmm.
have always been. And God loves me and blesses me as the same as any other human being. And that would be something that I would try to, if I could, I would really love the Black community to know that part about my life, that I am a Christian woman in my heart and am a God fearing woman. And God loves me the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that I really struggle with in this community in Black churches and whatnot in this area is that you don't, if you know God, then you must know He loves me, and you must know I'm His child, as you
Mm-hmm.
are. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Oh, we have one of our return viewers, Michelle Delicious Delights. Shout out to Michelle. And we had comments about, hey, it's great. It was a great conversation and it's timely and to keep up the good work. So, hey,
Thank
people
you.
are out there listening.
Great.
Now, on that note, we'd like to take a moment if you can share an excerpt from Yep, That's My Mommy.
Okay, let me grab my book. Just a minute.
Okay. Okay. While Jean is getting her book, um, I'd like to take some more time to talk about, as you say, Pride Month. Right. Me, I remember I was 17 when that Stonewall event took place, and later on, didn't learn about that until I came on campus a year later, And that was the time when all the movements of social change, such as not only LGBT rights, but you also had the anti war movement with Vietnam, women's rights, and you have Wounded Knee, South Dakota. All these movements, and of course, counterculture, were taking place simultaneously. For myself, it was a whole different ballgame being one of the very few openly LGBT students on campus, not to mention one of color. As Jean has shared, it requires persons, hey, just to stand up and set those boundaries. Um, as the years went on, the marches came on, and probably there's more of a celebration. So there was a shift so far as how it's politically speaking versus the celebration. But there's also still that protest, especially when AIDS came into the picture, and as a result, rather than splitting the community galvanized and just said, yes, we're here. I remember a quote that was often said, "Hey, we're here, we're queer, get used to it." Oh, I see, Jean. Yes, you are ready to share from your book, and looking forward to hearing.
Okay. So I'm just my book is just I'll read the first few pages of it's just things, and I'm sharing with what things that happened to my child, my son, upon picking him up at daycare. So the book starts is I'm going into the daycare to pick my son up, and one of the children tell my child Miguel, "Oh wait a minute, that's the wrong page. Let me turn back. Sorry." So I'm coming into the classroom, and one of the children tell my son, "Your daddy's here." What? Miguel didn't know what to say to his classmates. "Mommy," Miguel says. So I came again the next day to pick him up, and the child says, "Miguel, your daddy's here." "That's my mommy." "He's a man." "No, she's my mommy." "What's going on, children?" He said, "That's a man." "I am a transgender woman. I am Miguel's mommy, and my name is Mrs. Mountain." So these are things that have happened to my child at school in daycare, where I picked him up and people thought, children, maybe I didn't have my best face on. I don't know. But they thought I was Miguel's father, and so called me a man. And so as a child, Miguel had, it was hard for him. And eventually, and in the book, eventually, the child does tell Miguel at the end that when I come to pick him up at daycare, eventually in the end of the book, he says, "Miguel, your mommy's here." And that's how I came up with the name, That's My Mommy, because eventually the child did get it and start calling me Miguel's mommy and was more kind to me. But that took some time. And it's a difficult situation because how do you deal with a child? And that's always been one of the hard parts about this journey is how does a transgender woman deal with another person's child upon addressing you as a male or saying that Miguel's mommy looks like a man. So that's my whole purpose in writing this book is to educate children, to enlighten, to teach them people are different, and and that's my whole purpose of writing the book is because some children do look at people differently or see things that other people are don't they're not um, mature enough to understand that they're being rude, and they're just speaking in their childhood tone, and what they're saying. So that inspired me to write the book because Adults know better, but children don't. And so I thought if I wrote the book to make it fun, even to make the children understand as time went on, yes, there is an issue with me. I am a different type of mommy. So it was my job to figure out how to teach that child who I am, how I am, and that I am a mommy. And so that's what I did in writing this book. And I was very careful writing the book because I worked with one of the leading doctors at the University of Minnesota who helped us to write this book. So I just didn't do anything writing a book willy nilly. We worked very hard at writing this book to make sure that the things we were saying and how we were saying was going to reach the audience that we wanted to reach and to be respectful of the children reading it or even not saying too many details. My book doesn't have many words in it, but if you get it, hope you do, you'll see that it's very enlightening once you read it because I know when I first read it and before it was done and we were reading the words without the pictures, I would always tell my friend, it's just powerful. I said it doesn't say much. And so it was different when writing the book and seeing the book without the pictures. It was like, and just saying the words, and everybody's like, oh, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it. But eventually, when the book was finished and my friends did see the book and they read it, they were like, oh my God, girl, that was powerful. And most people do come back and say that, and I'm sure there's because I do remember I was at one of Stride Publishing bookstores when they had their first store in the IDS, their first store they had. And a woman came up to me and she said, oh, I got that book. And she said, but it was the way she said it. It was like, but I read it and I was like, oh, I can't give this to my grandchildren. But it was weird because I don't realize, she realized I was the one who wrote it. It was about me. But it was the way she said it to me, like, I couldn't read that to them. And it was a shock to me. And I was like, oh, I didn't really say much. But then she did teach me something. That day I learned. And from that point forward, after that, I always when my children go on play dates or something and my kids are dropped off or I bring the family a book. I autograph it and give them a book. And then and it's almost as if I'm testing, what's going to happen. And then they come back and they drop my kids off and they're like, and it's been very positive. But so when I do give people my book, what I was trying to say is that I do say to people as parents, because I want to be respectful, even though people may not have been respectful as me to as being a parent. I try to be respectful to other parents because I want to give what I expect to happen to me to other people, even though it doesn't. But I'm still going to be kind. I will give the parent opportunity when they do pick up the book or I give somebody a book. Please read the book first. To give them a little heads up, just to be able to let them digest it so that if they feel safe reading it to the book, because I don't want to be a pushy person when it comes to that. I do want people to have the right to figure out if it's good enough or if their child's ready for it. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing that I do think about, and when I do talk to people about my book, I want people to understand I'm not pushing this on you. You have the right to read it to your child or not to read it to your child. And that's something that I wish people could give me the same right to respect me on that level.
Indeed, indeed. That's one thing. When I was reviewing your book, and it said, I appreciate Mary Terrace. Shout out at Stride Bookstore for having your book as part of her collection and stuff, because
Yes.
these are books that need to be out there, especially
It,
when it comes to children. Because when you think about it and stuff, we are now part of a very diverse families. That quote nuclear two parents and children, isn't the only game in town, because we have blended families. You have extended families. You have friends families, you have LGBT families and stuff,
Yes.
and so and then overlay of those of us who are of color, so that so having it out there, these books need to be there, and
Oh,
people need to know that they're there because after all, children want to see books that reflect themselves and their families.
yes, because we are, and like you said, we are, life is different. We are in a different time now where there are so many different, like you said, so many different families. And one thing I try to teach my children, is that one thing that I've taught my children, and I'll tell you all this, that I tell them, is that my children are new seeds, and we're going to plant them all over wherever they may go. And I want my children to be the best that they can be. And what I mean by that is I tell my children that you're a new seed. Go out in the world, and I'm going to plant it where you may plant it. And you'll grow your own tree, and you'll grow a different family, and you'll be a different family tree. I want my children to understand that if my children go away to college and never come back, I would be happy because then I did my job. Because I want them to know that I want them to be able to go in the world and not carry the burden of me being their mother. And I won't be sad and I won't have sorrow. It will break my heart as a mother. But if they go out there and they put their seed somewhere else and start a whole new life and a whole new family and have a successful tree, then I've done my job. And as much as all of that may break my heart and them leaving me, I want that for my children. I want my children to be able to, if they need to go away from me and become successful and leave me behind, I'm okay with that. And I know people may not understand that, but you know what? My heart and my soul is big enough to let that happen because I don't, and I may have loved them enough that I may be a part of it. But if it's not working for them, I accept that. I accept that proudly because I've raised them to be able to have their own mind and their own will and everything that goes with that. As hurtful as it may be for me, I raised my children to be that way, to be able to, if you need to leave when you're successful and you're older and you need to not, me not to be a part of that anymore for whatever reason, I'm okay with that. And I love you more for it because then that means I've loved my child well enough to give him that ground and that opportunity. And I want my children, as parents, we need to give our opportunity to our children to be free of our burden as well. And I know people may not understand that, but in my shoes, I'm saying that because it's something that I do think about. I do worry about. And I want my children not to have fear or sorrow or sadness by leaving me behind to become what they want to become because of this is the world. And this is unfortunately, be real and be honest about things and you may be able to be successful. And that's part of my honesty is that that's my truth. Baby, if you need to go and I'm not a part of it, I'm proud of you. But no, I love you and I hope you love me as well.
There you go. So that means that's part of what we have as being parents. We're raising adults as you look at it that way. So now we've already touched on different areas where you talked about being unsafe or feeling unsafe in public. But I want to go to a quote that inspires you. You said, "God gives you what you need, not what you want." Can you expand on that?
Well, I think it took me all these years to understand that. A lot of times I'm laying in bed, I'm like, oh God, I want to win the lottery. You know, I need the lottery to get away from this life, this world. You
uh,
know, I want the lottery. That'll fix everything. And as a child, because we were raised so religious, I remember every night praying, "Dear God, please fix whatever has happened to me. Fix this." And I would dream and I would pray very elaborate. I'd be like, "Lord, change all the school records, change all the doc." I was thinking on that level, change me to who I'm supposed to be, fix this madness, you know? And it wasn't until I'm my age now, maybe 55, I'm 60, maybe 55, did I realize that God does not give you what you want, He gives you what you need. He gives you the tools to make it happen. It took me all these years to understand that. You know, I thought it was a Coach purse or a diamond ring. You know what I'm saying? And then one day I realized, I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not what it is at all. You know, and I think if as people, if we start to realize that God doesn't, you know, I didn't want God to give this to me, but He did. And He wanted to see how I would go about this in the world and how I would be, and would I be a good steward? Would I be kind? Would I be what He wanted me to be still in this body? And you know what? I hope I passed the test. I hope I've done that. And then that's when, once you start to realize you can be okay in yourself, you can start to be okay in the world. Because like I said, I wanted a lot of things. I never got them, you know? And then I one day realized that God just gives you what you need, not what you want. It just, it's just you know what? Unfortunately, it is just as simple as that.
yeah, we try to complicate things that God makes so simple.
Yep.
And so we have a few minutes left here. I'm going to ask you a question. I've asked this to my other authors, guest authors, that now from where you are now, Jean, what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self?
Stop worrying, be you, and let it happen. You know, I mean, I think, because I think being 13, I think I was more scared of what would they say, what would they do, because at 13, I didn't know what color I was and I didn't know my gender, you know, and having those two burdens on me at that age was, I never knew that I would overcome all that, because being mixed and being transgender are quite a lot for a 13-year-old to deal with. But like I said, I would say just go with it. You know, I mean, I wish, like you said, I wish I would have knew this now, you know, because I think life would have been different. But I didn't. Like I said, I'd say to myself, just go, 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 you know. And I did. I did go.
Yeah, there you go. Now, speaking of our history and stuff, the LGBT rights, June 27th, 1969 was a watershed moment for it. So then I
Did you
wanted to
choose
get
that day? Did you do all this deliberately?
today's June 27th. So yeah, so they said, okay,
But
let's conclude
I'm
this.
I'm so thankful for that, because you taught me something that you really gave me something to go with.
Hey, indeed, indeed. So now I want to ask another one of those watershed moments and stuff. June 26, 2015, that was a day when they said marriage equality became the law of the land. Do you remember where you were on that day?
You know, I don't. And and it's like it was a happy moment for me, because I thought, you know, I, that was the dream that I always had of being married and being
Mhm.
having the I always wanted a wedding. I still want a wedding. My kids
Yeah.
always ask me, why don't I marry daddy? And I'm like, whatever. We're not going to go there. But I mean, I am, it is something that I think that as a transgender woman, that's a dream we always have. I mean, because I still do have to, people won't believe this, but I dream just like other little girls did.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they believe that or not, because being a woman wasn't my makeup, it was my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference that I don't think people understand, that this isn't the makeup I wear, the clothes I wear, or any
Mm-hmm.
of that. It
Right.
is in my heart and it is in my soul.
Hey, I get that. It's a part of who we are. Definitely part of who we are. And just to share, I know when June 26, 2015 came about, my husband and I went out to a breakfast restaurant to celebrate. And as a matter of fact, last Friday, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary.
Amen.
Yes, we got married during Pride Month.
Oh,
So,
that you might that's kind of like choosing Valentine's Day.
indeed, indeed. So far in closing, I'd like to pose this. Um, what are the one-on-one conversations that need to happen? Because they say, especially because no, so far as trans visibility and just hey, you know, just as so far as knowledge and say having that one-on-one sharing that promotes awareness and understanding.
I think that it's what we need to do is just be more kind all the way around.
Mhm.
Number one, I think we have gotten away from being kind. With the pandemic, I think people have learned to be mean. Everybody's very mean about every single thing. And I think if we could just be kinder to people, we could start to see through. I mean, we're in such a politically evil place right now that it reflects every aspect of our life, unfortunately, And so I think being kinder would be something that I would say to people. Let's just be kinder, because being kinder could change everything. It's free to smile. It's free to say kind word. People don't understand there are free things in life.
That's true. In other words, how we show love and putting that love into action.
Yes. Because
Indeed.
I think that we've gotten away from that part of. I think that and as a whole, we're just not kind to anybody anymore. You know, Driving on the street, everything, say hi to somebody. Say hello, smile. Even if that person that try it one day, spend a week doing it and see how you feel. You'll be surprised about how much happiness it'll bring yourself. You know, because we don't speak to one another anymore. We don't say hi. We just moving in our fast worlds, our fast cars, our fast lives. Everything's fast, you know. And if we stopped and took a moment just to say hello or even smile, I appreciate when somebody smiles at me or speaks to me. I do. I mean, I'm old school, and I just think it's a form of endearment with people. Just it's somebody smiling at you or speaking to you means a lot to me.
That makes all the difference because like what we give is what we receive and stuff. And oh, Michelle, thank you for the anniversary greetings. I appreciate them, and I'm sure, and my husband does too. So with that being said, we are going to close. And Jean, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for your wonderful book. Yep, that's my mommy. Because
And
that,
thank you for giving me my little tidbit today.
amen, amen, amen. So, for those of you out there, like, share, and subscribe as we conclude this Pride Month presentations. This is W.D. Foster Graham from Inside News, the Conversation with Al McFarlane, and say thank you once again to our amazing guest. And we will see you on the next go round.
Thank you.